Hello and welcome to this short video about all the sociological theories on family life. I'd just like to give a shout out to all my students in the Year 13 group: Sam, Will, Francis, Natalie, Vicky, Sophie, Isabel, Aman, Kenise. So they've asked me to put together this video as a summary. So sociological theories on family life, we're going to cover functionalism, Marxism, feminists, personal life perspective, postmodernists, and new right perspectives. And each of those on separate slides so you can see the key words. This is based on the AQA textbook, but of course it's applicable to any level and area of sociology. So first of all, functionalism. Functionalists believe that there's a shared set of values which tie us together in society, and they provide a sense of a shared culture which provides a sense of togetherness or social solidarity, and this leads to harmonious cooperation so we can work together smoothly. They use the organismic analogy or organic analogy where they compare society, especially Durkheim uses this, comparing society to an organic system like the human body, where each part, unit or organ of the body has a role to play for the functioning of the whole system. Just like in society, the family, education, criminal justice system, the media, they all have a role to play which keeps the whole society running. This is partly, and this is not normally necessarily looked at that much, but to understand this, why does the system work? You know, why is it good? Why is society good? So there is this idea that human nature has got two sides, and this is what Durkheim calls the homo duplex model. So homo, man, duplex, two-sided. So there are two sides to human nature, and human nature has two sides because there's the moral side, which is basically we have the capacity to learn moral values and to attach our moral precepts or principles to feelings. So we can learn to feel guilt about misbehaviour. But the other side of human nature is our natural inclination to be selfish, to see things from a personal viewpoint, and to be irrational in our behaviour because we often do things which are not logical because they are done out of selfishness. For example, proud behaviour, behaviour where we might attack others because we fear them attacking us. So in terms of family life, it's important that there be a structure and an order to family life where it needs to be constant, predictable and certain. Because human nature is so prone to uncertainty, instability, selfishness and irrationality. So each institution of society has a function. In terms of the family performs various roles for society, so it has an important role as the kind of keystone of society, or cornerstone of society, and many benefits it provides. So Murdoch talks about the four functions of the family: sexual, economic, educational, reproductive. Parsons talks about the two functions of the family: stabilisation of adult personalities, which is basically psychological and emotional well-being, and the primary socialisation, which is the same as education, which Murdoch describes. So the problem with these views is they're very optimistic about the role of the family and about the nature of social structure in society, and they ignore downsides to society and the role of the family. So that brings us on nicely to Marxism. Marxists look at society as riven by conflict, whereas functionalists argue that everyone has a shared set of goals and that everyone benefits from those goals and everyone benefits from society because everyone is human and everyone needs to be kind of protected from each other and to be in a state of security and not fear. Marxists argue that instead of everyone benefiting from society, some groups benefit more than others, some groups are exploited and some groups that do the exploiting. So the rich exploit the poor. We have a shared culture. Marxists agree with functionalists about that, but the Marxist argument is that the shared culture helps us be exploited or used unfairly, which is what exploitation means. So the Marxist answer to why is there a shared culture then the answer is ideology. So that's a belief system which is shared and used to exploit certain groups. So it's a distorted belief system. Ideology would include the beliefs of the ruling class, which would include beliefs like, there's only certain people who have the right to hold power. There's only certain types of family that are correct and ideal. That men have a certain place and women have a certain place. The argument is that we've all absorbed these ruling class ideas, and that means that we are basically brainwashed by the rich. There is a great deal of inequality in society, and the family promotes this by socialising us into the unequal system to believe that it's okay. So, for example, from our parents, we learn, if you work hard at school, you'll be able to get a good job. Some people are leaders because they're more intelligent, so they deserve that position. Meritocracy is a real thing. Like the functionalists talk about meritocracy as a real thing, that your status or position in society is based on your efforts and ability, whereas the Marxists say your status in society is a result of being unfairly treated by the rich if you're working class, and if you're rich, your position and status is just based on maintaining your power by brainwashing the poor. The family is therefore a key agent of socialisation, which is beneficial for the upper class because it promotes the values of the upper class. It socialises children into being obedient, like puppets or sheep, passive, subordinate, and it also provides workers physically, who are fed and watered and prepared and trained to go into the capitalist workplace. So the Marxist view of human nature is very different to the functionalist view. It assumes that human beings are naturally loving, benevolent and kind. It's partly because Marx was influenced by Eastern views, Eastern philosophies. But essentially what Rousseau argued that is in a state of nature, human beings were loving and kind and benevolent. They would care for each other, so actually it's society that has corrupted us. Human nature is not naturally flawed, wicked, selfish and potentially violent to each other. Human beings are loving, and it's society that has turned us into kind of city dwellers who are taught to be selfish, trained to be unkind and trained to be wicked to each other. And that's basically a result of capitalism. Okay, the feminist view of family life is similar to Marxist in it being a conflict theory, which means that it argues there's certain groups in society who benefit from the social system, certain groups who lose out, and that they're at odds with each other, even if they don't realise this because they're socialised to be obedient. So feminists think that society is divided on gender lines, so there's a gender war between the sexes, battle of the sexes, so it's a patriarchal society, it's unequal and oppressive. So the family plays a role in perpetuating, maintaining the status quo of patriarchy. It is unequal because women do more housework and childcare and emotional work. And if they do paid work, they still end up doing the bulk of the housework, chores and roles. They're oppressed because they're not able to achieve true freedom as women, because they're expected to have children, they're expected to do the housework and take care of the home, and this is because they're trained from childhood through gender role socialisation as described by Oakley. This is beneficial for males, so you could talk about the triple shift, Duncan and Marsden, the dual burden as Oakley describes it. The problem with feminists and Marxists are very critical, and they probably ignore the changes and the increasing amount of choice in society now. So it's postmodernists who argue that we have a great deal of choice as individuals and a great deal of change as society. There's more equal rights for the working class or class groups, ethnic groups, gender groups and age groups. There's more opportunities, more freedom, more rights. Giddens talks about pure relationships. So the individualization thesis is that people increasingly have individual freedom to choose how their life is run, how they live, their lifestyle, the type of relationships they have, the kind of families they live in. So postmodernists have a more open definition of family life, which is however subjects, individual human agents define family life. Pure relationships are relationships where you're searching for happiness based on your needs being met. This has replaced the romantic ideals of love. I talk about this in the other video I've made on postmodernism. I'll put a link below. Pure relationships are based on the mutual satisfaction of individual needs. So if each person is satisfying the needs of the other person, the relationship continues. If one person is dissatisfied, their needs are not being met intellectually, emotionally, physically, sexually, psychologically, then they will end the relationship, and people have the freedom to do so. This is leading to equal rights and equal relationships between males and females, according to Giddens. Ulrich Beck talks about risk society, and he says that there's greater individualization leading to more awareness of hazards and risks, downsides to any behaviour, lifestyle or choice that we make. So we do have more individual freedom, but we also have more awareness of the downsides of any choice. So if we get married, we could get divorced. If we have children, we could lose our role as parent. We could lose our job if we get a job. So increasingly we're thrown back on ourselves in our individual capacity to negotiate with others, to have our needs satisfied, which puts pressure on us as individuals, makes us feel anxious, isolated and lonely. And it's quite an impersonal world. Intimacy, close relationships become more chaotic, less certain, more unstable, less orderly, less predictable, less constant, more subject to change. So this is what Beck and Gernsheim refer to as the chaos of intimacy. There's more anxiety as a result of all of these changes. It's a double-edged sword. It can also lead to equality and freedom. Personal life perspective is very critical of postmodernists because they exaggerate choice and change according to PLP, personal life perspective. Who people like Vanessa May and Carol Smart would argue that social norms influence the choices we make. So we don't make choices in a vacuum where we're not influenced by social structures, choices and context. It's normal to get married, so we get married. It's normal to find someone that we love, to be in a relationship with, so we search for love. We don't just randomly choose relationships. Social context and social and structural factors influence choices, so we are influenced in terms of the situation, in terms of our living situation, in terms of how much money we have, whether we're male or female. All of these factors will affect our lives. The other structures like race, ethnicity, age will affect how much freedom, choice and power and influence we have. So there's a web of connectedness. This is the connectedness thesis. In contrast to the individualization thesis, it argues instead that we are connected to others, and any choice we make is going to be reliant on their acceptance and the factors that come into play, such as class, age, gender and ethnicity. We can't make any choice that we want. We are limited by our social class, our gender and also our sexuality. So in terms of gender, women generally gain custody after divorce, and therefore they have more limited freedom compared to males in terms of developing their career, because they have the responsibility for childcare compared to males who have more freedom to follow a professional career. Heteronormativity, lesbian women, gay men, gay females are subject to the pressure to and the normal expectation to be heterosexual. So again, people can't live in same-sex relationships with the same freedom and choice and acceptance that heterosexuals can. And so there is bias, discrimination, stigma of homosexuality. We may argue that it's been more normalised, but the argument here is that it's still not got the same status as heterosexual relationships, nuclear families, and therefore, although we see it a lot in the media, like every advert seems to contain a gay couple or some kind of gay relationship at times, It's still the case that gay marriage is only been around since 2014 in the UK. Same-sex, the Married Couples Act, same-sex couples, it's only 2014. So civil partnerships before then. So it's relatively recent that these changes have taken place, still having an effect on the social structure. So there's still a lot of limitation to our freedom to create diverse families. Diverse families are more common, but within the constraints dependent on our class, age, gender, ethnicity. Finally, I think this is finally, the new right perspective adopts a very critical view of any form of family change and diversity. It adopts a conservative approach, so it's very resistant to change, wants to maintain the status quo, keep things as they are, follow tradition and history. And so, for example, John Redwood, conservative politician in the 1990s, says the natural family is a two-parent family. So the neoliberal strand of the new right perspective, because they've got a conservative strand and a neoliberal strand. So the neoliberal strand is basically a new form of liberalism. It places a lot of emphasis on individual freedom, because liberals always emphasise individual freedom. So neoliberalism emphasises the idea that individuals should be free to make choices, but it criticises any form of state intervention which limits choice, such as taxes, but also state welfare. Because state welfare is anything from benefits and welfare which limits choice would include welfare that's given to families, which encourages people to be dependent on the state or married to the government. And instead of being self-reliant, they are dependent and reliant on the government. So from a neoliberal new right perspective, welfare benefits should be reduced. We should penalise lone parenthood. And there should be one family type which is reinforced by the system, and that's the only type of intervention that should take place. There is this argument they have that there's a natural family, and this is the division and the union between men and women. Men and women are divided in that they're different, and they naturally form a union in that they are sexually attracted to each other. They fit together in terms of their biological strengths and weaknesses and skills and capacities. So men are capable of things which women are not, and women are capable of things which men are not, and so they fit together like a button into a buttonhole, as I think Parsons referred to the family, the nuclear family. It's the same view as functionalists in arguing that there's a natural division of labour divided upon gender lines, with the instrumental role and expressive role for the male and the female respectively. Any form of diversity, therefore, will lead to social problems, especially lone parenthood. So social problems would include poverty, crime, just a general lack of clarity, certainty over norms and values, and no one knows their place, no one knows the division and where the line is in terms of moral boundaries, so there's more antisocial behaviour and unrest. People not pulling their weight, contributing to society, so you'll have idleness, laziness or fecklessness, people being unable to contribute, unwilling, or feeling that they're victims and that the government must and they expect the government to support them. Lone parenthood is a particular concern for the new right. Charles Murray saw this as creating an underclass in the 1980s, both in terms of the black African-American community, but he also argued this was happening in the community in the UK. It's a particular problem because lone parents are unable to provide breadwinning function to children because of their duties as carers. They're unable to properly care for and socialise the children because they're partly spreading themselves thin in terms of providing breadwinning. They're unable to go out to work and provide professional careers which would support a family properly, but they're also unable to teach their children norms and values properly because of the fact that they're one person trying to provide as well as teach their children. unable to provide discipline, especially for males and females. Females will therefore run wild and have teenage pregnancies, get pregnant at a young age. Males will run wild and turn to crime and deviance because they haven't been taught, disciplined and controlled adequately. This is quite a concern in terms of government policies. The new Labour government, while it had a mix of some more Marxist, left-wing, feminist-influenced policies, trying to encourage women to go back to work under the New Deal, they also had policies where they were going to penalise mothers who didn't ensure that their children go to school, and one woman was, arrested and locked up and imprisoned for that, for not ensuring her child went to school. And there's also labelling and antisocial behaviour orders, which also fit in with this conservative emphasis on a strong state, strict control and policing, and where there's a concern about family life, they did, also express concern about having parents caring for children. David Cameron subsequently has focused on parenting and family life as the most important factor of society, and he's also, wanted to increase the number of health visitors after the birth of the child. But they also introduced same-sex marriage with the Liberal Democrats in their coalition, which reflects their unwillingness to acknowledge liberal cultural values. If you have any questions about this short video, please do send me an email at daniel_butcher@hotmail.co.uk, and I'll put a link in the video instruction notes below to link to the Postmodernism and Family video, but there are other videos on various sociological topics on my channel. Thank you.